All right. Welcome, everybody, to the 2022 50 Over 50 celebration event presented by AARP Minnesota and Pollen Midwest. It has been 3 years since we have been able to gather in person to celebrate our 50 Over 50 honorees, and it brings me immense joy to be in this space with you all this afternoon to celebrate. Before we get started, I want to take a few moments to acknowledge the land that we are on today. To change our collective story for the better, we must look at the lessons of the past as a means to prepare us for what's to come. Part of that reflective practice must include an acknowledgement of the stolen land non-Native people occupy. There are 11 sovereign Anishinaabe and Dakota people, or tribes, here in Minnesota. Pollen is based in Minneapolis, which is the homeland of the Dakota people. Indigenous people have been here for millennia, are still here, and continue to thrive here despite centuries of genocide, ethnic cleansing, forced removal, broken treaties, and ongoing colonialism and oppression. Their contributions to society are innumerable and continue to touch every facet of public life. Pollen is committed to creating and sharing stories that move away from the false and harmful narratives about Native Americans and toward new and contemporary narratives that repair harm and center strength and progress. We will bolster our ongoing efforts to hire and support the work of Native storytellers, artists, and performers, and we will engage with and amplify the work of local Native-led organizations and actions that benefit Native communities. And here's what you all can do as well. Lift up Native truths and interrupt false narratives. Learn about the Native peoples and tribes who are part of the community that you are in. Support Native-owned businesses, hire Native artists, and demand accurate Indigenous history in our Minnesota schools. I'd like to thank the Native Governance Center and Reclaiming Narrative Truth for their support in helping to craft this land acknowledgement. And now it is my pleasure to welcome to the stage 2020 Disruptor, Wookie Wea, and 2020 Community Honoree, Dr. Anthony Stately, our MCs for this afternoon's celebration.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I'm Wookie Wea, representing the continent of Africa, in case you couldn't tell from my dress. 2 years ago, I was named a 2020 Disruptor and watched this celebration from home on my computer screen. Though I'm disappointed to not be in my house clothes right now, it feels good to be celebrating the 2022 50 Over 50 honorees together in person. Disruptors come in all sizes and shapes. They are champions of innovation and systems change. Some are bold and outspoken, some are quiet and diplomatic. They believe that true community lives in the hearts of the people. Disruptors are patient, waiting to pounce on opportunities for transformational system change. In disruption, we find what our soul truly loves. Disruptors don't run away from risk, they run towards it. They are not afraid of failure. They feed on the lessons learned from mistakes. Disruptors don't worry about being politically correct. They do what they need to do. Yes, disruptors know how to work the system so the system can work for them. Disruptors believe, like I do, that old people are the keepers of the memories, and young people are the keepers of the dream. And something magical and mystical happens when the two generations collide. Now, speaking of disruption, integrity, and change, it is my pleasure to introduce my co-host, Elder in Training, Dr. Anthony Stately.
Thank you so much, Wookie. Buju Haumatakiapi. Hello, relatives. My name is Dr. Anthony Stately, and I'm a citizen of the Oneida Nation of Wisconsin and a descendant of the great Red Lake and White Earth Nations of Minnesota. I have the distinguished honor and privilege of being the servant leader of the Native American Community Clinic in Minneapolis, which provides primary care, dental care, behavioral health care, and spiritual and cultural services to the local Native American community. I am also a 2020 50 over 50 community honoree, and it is such a pleasure to be here with my fellow honorees, past and present. I'm especially happy to be sharing the stage with Wookie Wea this afternoon. Wookie's life work of supporting young people has inspired me to think about what I'm passing down to future generations. As elders, it's our responsibility to set them up for success. I'm really proud to be a member of the 50 over 50 honorees alumni and to welcome you all and to express my respect and congratulations to all of this year's honorees. It's a big deal to be acknowledged by your community for your good work and contributions to making Minnesota such a wonderful place to live, play, and socialize. We have having recently celebrated my 60th birthday, I'm excited to compete for future titles in the sensational 60 over 60 cohort. And God willing, the stupendous 70 over 70. But seriously, in my culture, elders have always been treasured gifts and an important asset to our community for their wisdom and their guidance. I'm blessed to have the distinction of being a baby elder and to be with you here today. Wookie and I enthusiastically said yes when asked to co-MC today's celebration event. The 50 over 50 program works to not only change the story we tell ourselves about aging, but also to bring people together across generations to learn from and celebrate one another. AARP Minnesota and Pollen joined forces in 2016 to disrupt aging and share the stories of individuals across Minnesota who are inspiring others, making an impact and living their lives through action. The result? An entirely new list that recognizes and celebrates the possibilities and the contributions that come with age. The 300 plus individuals from across Minnesota that AARP and Pollen have recognized over the last 6 years have proven that you don't have to be under 40, 30, or 20 to blaze a trail or to shake things up. We'd like to take a moment to thank all of the 50 over 50 alumni who are here with us this evening. If you're able and comfortable in doing so, please stand and be recognized.
I've received strict instructions from the polling crew to stay on script. Good luck with that. Once an African takes the mic, it's hard to get them off. So earlier this year, folks from across the state visited 50over50mn.org to nominate leaders in their community in one of 5 categories: arts and culture, business, community, disruptor, and nonprofit. A transparent cohort of distinguished peers then took on the near impossible task of narrowing down the list to 50 of the most inspiring and accomplished leaders from across the state. You all can help us spread the word about this year's honorees and their courageous, compassionate, and selfless acts of service by sharing today's celebration on social media. Be sure to use hashtag 50over50 when sharing updates, pictures, of video. Now let's meet Minnesota's 2022 50 over 50 honorees.
This group of community builders, public officials, educators, nonprofit leaders, healers, small business owners, artists, and disruptors continue to show up for all of us in exceptional ways. Well past the age when society tells them that they've done their part and can take a break. They keep our communities connected, whole, and nourished, strengthen and grow our nonprofit sector, create a thriving culture, steward our economic resources and talent, and infuse the energy of innovation into industries, products, systems, and policies that improve our lives.
Let's start with the 50 over 50 arts honorees. And while they're making their way to the stage, I will take a few minutes to share a joke. A few years ago, my niece, who was expecting a baby girl, asked me to name the baby. I was so honored and said without hesitation, "You must call her Denise." A few months later, she called in absolute panic. "We are having twins, a boy and a girl. What should I call the boy?" And I said without hesitation, "The nephew." The skill and ability to express yourself in the world around you does not diminish with age, but rather is enriched with new and unexpected perspectives. From guiding dozens of voices in song to capturing moments in film to giving history a fresh breath, these honorees are helping create a richer, more visceral world for those around them, for years in the past and for years to come. Audience, please hold your applause until we have introduced the honorees in each category. You can follow along in your program and check out full bios of all the honorees at 50over50mn.org. First up is Dr. Anton Armstrong, a voice raiser from Northfield. For 32 years, Dr. Anton Armstrong has led the illustrious St. Olive Choir in service to his students, his audience, and to music itself. His love of choral music when he was a child singing in the American Boy Choir. The experience, he says, opened my world to the beauty of choral singing and the transformative power it could have on the performer and listener. Anton continues to nurture students toward the globe and inspire audiences. Next, we have filmmaker Daniel Burgent, a narrative weaver from Minneapolis who uses his cameras as his weapon of choice, fighting back against what he calls the slow burn of stereotypes, criminalization, and dehumanization of Black men he sees in the media. His films go deep into the history of inequity in Minnesota, revealing the layers of racism, homophobia, and sexism that are often forgotten or ignored. Daniel also pulls on the narrative threads of creativity, activism, and resilience from the people and communities most affected by these issues, pointing viewers to a more expansive and generative story of who we are as Minnesotans. Next up, Susan Beecher is a community creator from Minneapolis. As an artist, teacher, and community organizer, Susan is known for her careful mentorship and intentional efforts to elevate the work of her students and colleagues, especially those who are traditionally unrepresented in the art world. Through her nonprofit, Overexposure, Susan has organized photography projects, workshops, and public forums to inspire social change. Inspired by the possibilities offered by Zoom and FaceTime during the pandemic, she has kicked off 2 new collaborative projects that explore themes of isolation, loneliness, and the impact on emotions and well-being. Sharon Bridgeford has a long list of professional accolades to her name and could be spending this stage of her career basking in her success. Instead, the story stager from Minneapolis remains a working playwright and performer, creating healing and generous space for younger and emerging Black artists. Whether the medium is dance, drama, or podcasts, Sharon continues to spread her messages of expansive love for audience in Minnesota and around the nation. Catherine Hudat, a theater thriver from Minneapolis, has spent her career telling stories of her Arab American community. For 12 years, she was the artistic and executive director of MISNA, one of the few Arab American arts and literary organizations in the United States. As an award-winning playwright, Catherine's work not only counters the devastating stereotypes of Arab Americans, but equips members of her community to connecting with their history and heritage. Her work has been performed at area stages like the Mixed Blood in the Guthrie, as well as through the theater collective she founded, the New Arab American Theater Works. Elizabeth Jacola is committed to capturing a kind of soundtrack to the lives of Minnesotans' Indian Finnish populations. An enrolled member of the Fond du Lac, Band of Lake Superior, Ojibwe in Cloquet, with roots in both the Anishinaabe, thank you, and Finnish American communities of northern Minnesota. Liz performs and composes music that draws from traditions, Anishinaabe music, jazz, blues, even opera. The Sound Shaper is set to record her second Indigenous opera, which will also be performed at the Kennedy Center and was recently elected to the Cloquet City Council. Michael Kleber-Dix of St. Paul is a leader and instructor with the Minnesota Prison Writing Workshop, helping to cultivate and elevate the powerful literary voices of Minnesota's incarcerated communities. As a world wrangler and teacher, he helps his students discover new forms of expression and tap into new skills. His work with students and their writing pushes the broader community to rethink its narratives about incarcerated people. He's known as an outspoken voice for social justice in the community, using his voice online and in person to call out injustice and move for change. For more than 50 years, gallery grower George Roberts has fanned the transformative spark of art into a blazing presence in North Minneapolis. After 3 decades teaching writing and literature at North High School, he founded Homework Studio, an art gallery and artist studio in his North Minneapolis neighborhood, where artists can show their work free of charge, making gallery shows more accessible for artists and an audience of all economic backgrounds. Sandy Spieler is a founding member and artistic director of Minneapolis in the heart of the Beast Theater and directed the legendary May Day Parade and pageant for more than 40 years. When the theater downsized a few years ago, there was a push to dismantle the huge stock of larger-than-life puppets. Instead, Susan is working with a team to catalog them, find new homes for them in museums and other spaces, and create collections that can be activated in the community as needed. In 2018, filmmaker Barbara Weiner made what's known as a citizens film as a group of people being charged in an unsuccessful bloodless coup trying to end a brutal dictatorship in the Republic of Gambia. The 1-hour film offered a more nuanced understanding of the efforts of those charged and was taken into consideration by the judge. After deliberations, the longest sentence given was 9 months. Barbara films pointed to the bravery of those involved, and word spread, eventually leading to the liberations of Gambia within a year. Please join me in congratulating our 2022 over 50 art honorees.
Next up is the business category. Businesses enliven our communities, providing opportunities for people, neighborhoods, and cities to flourish. This year's business honorees illustrate just how much their experiences, earned business savvy, and dedication can transform the spaces around them. From businesses specializing in travel, to food, to recycled goods, the honorees lead with their hearts first. A culinary conductor from Minneapolis, David Fema is known for his bottomless generosity. Since coming to Minneapolis 30 years ago, he has donated his time as a chef for galas, fundraisers, and school career day talks. Sharing his restaurant space with Minnesota Central Kitchen, David and his team provided up to 10,000 meals a week for underserved communities. And when COVID left the entire industry in shambles overnight, David and his family linked arms with Chef Justin Sutherland and the Sanaha Foundation to create the North Stands, offering financial help to industry folks who were out of work. Carol Julia from Eden Prairie created Senior Travel Companion Services, an innovative service that works out logistics and offers travel companion services for vulnerable adults with some kind of health concern or mobility issue that makes traveling alone challenging at best and at worst dangerous. The company offers travel escorts who accompany seniors on their trips. Carol herself has been a companion on more than 100 trips. She's advocated for programs that alert TSA agents when a traveler has a hidden disability like autism or aphasia. And she volunteers with an international coalition of service professionals, airport staff, and travel advocates working to improve air travel for people with dementia. Heidi Haben started her career at a reception desk of Crash and Sue's media company in Minneapolis. Now she owns the place. Wow. Go Heidi. This creative climber has created a work culture shaped by a set of core values that define Heidi herself. Fearless, invested, united, and driven by integrity. Along with choosing clients and projects based more on their contributions to the community than their budget, Heidi launched a nonprofit, the Crash and Sue's Foundation, that gave out more than $30,000 in less than 6 months to local organizations like the Sanaha Foundation, Urban Ventures, and Five Stone Media. Mary Quinn McCollum is the CEO of strategic communications and PR consultancy called Field Guide Incorporated, where she directs traffic at the intersections of environmental, social, and racial justice by lifting up the work of her change-making clients. Offering her expertise on everything from communications consulting to media relations to core brand work, this client guider has helped organizations like Appetite for Change, Tech Dump, and Can Wonderland tell their stories and shake up their slice of the metro. As Chief Communications Officer for Land O'Lakes, Kim Olson of Lakeville had a front row seat to see that the lack of broadband access was leaving farmers and their communities at a deficit. To address the problem, Kim helped bring awareness, advocacy, and action to the issue as CEO Beth Ford. The result was the American Connection Project, an initiative to bring internet connection to rural communities and enable better health care, education, and economic outcomes. The Policy Coalition helped assure more than $65 billion for accessible broadband was added to the recently passed Jobs and Infrastructure Bill. Wow, go Kim. After a series of high-level HR roles, Ann Sample of Minneapolis felt the drive to make philanthropy part of her personal mission. She connected with Navigate Forward, a Minnesota-based company offering coaching to senior executives in transition, and was so impressed she bought the company. In 2021, they donated more than $40,000 to 134 nonprofits and are on track to donate more than 5% of their 2020 earnings to charities. Along with their consulting work, Navigate Forward provides critical cohort support to women of color who have the background to serve on boards, makes women aware of those opportunities, and sets them up to thrive. Since 2009, Julie Steller, the cozy crafter from Minneapolis, has been bringing her mittens, bags, jewelry, and home goods made from repurposed wool sweaters into specialty shops throughout Minnesota. Now employing more than a dozen artists in her Northeast Minneapolis workshop and retail space, Julie has built a business where women artists gather to share their crafts, their stories, and their expertise. Stellar Handcrafted Goods is a space where wonder, joy, and delight are infused into every product. Whether it's sweaters or people, Julie believes that everything has an unfinished story to tell. Dan Stoltz from Falcon Heights came on as president and CEO of Spire Credit Union in the middle of the 2010 recession. In the 22 years since Spire has surpassed $2 billion in assets and serves more than 150,000 members. For Dan, the real legacy of his leadership is the culture of service and community that's baked into every part of Spire. Whether it's $1 million in charitable donations, $250,000 in COVID-19 relief for local businesses and nonprofits, $50,000 in aid for first responders and veterans, or raising $10,000 for the American Cancer Society, these are the numbers that matter most to this growth giver. And his commercials are really great, actually, by the way. Lynn Werman from Minneapolis grew up in a family with a long history of mental illness and cognitive disability. She learned firsthand what it's like to be excluded and ignored because of disability. Fueled by the belief that things didn't have to be that way, Lynn built Digital Accessibility by WeCo. The company's accessibility specialists and testers live with one more disability, bringing real life accessibility testing to digital products. Employees are empowered as experts by virtue of their lived experience and their professional training. With nearly all leadership positions held by minority women, WeCo and Lynn work to ensure that no one is left out. As publisher of the Minnesota Spokesman Recorder, Minnesota's oldest Black-owned, family-owned, female-owned newspaper, Tracy Williams Dillard of Minneapolis knows that her work is about more than the printed word. The paper has been a trusted source of health information for the Black community during the pandemic. But Tracy's reach goes beyond what shows up in her paper. The Caring Chronicler created Sister Spokesman, a monthly gathering of women of color where they can encourage each other, build their networks, and strengthen their bonds. For 15 years, this space has been a source of healing and celebration for Black women in the Twin Cities. How about a round of applause for this year's 50 over 50 Business Honorees?
We're going to pause for a moment now to welcome a very special guest to the stage. Diane Jarvie is a singer-songwriter who had 7 solo recordings and has received a McKnight Macfield Performing Fellowship and awarded a Minnesota Arts and Cultural Fund grant. Under the name Diane Jarvinpa, she is the author of The Way She Told Her Story, The Tender Wild Things and Defining the Landscape from New River Press, and Swift Bright Drift and Ancient Wonders, The Modern World from Red Dragonfly Press. She has received the Midwest Independent Publishers Association's Award, is a teaching artist with the Alzheimer's Poetry Project, Minnesota, and St. Paul's East Side Arts Council, and was named a 50 over 50 Arts honoree in 2020. Please join me in welcoming Diane for a reading of her poem, Dream the Garden.
Thank you, Wilkie. I'm honored to be here today and to have been chosen as one of the 50 over 50 in the year 2020. What I have learned over the years working with all the other over 20s or other older 50s, because we like them better. No, just kidding. In memory care and in senior centers is you never count these people out. As the poet Carl Dennis said, think of the sunlight we failed to welcome, how others stepped forward to take it in. And so how we all have come together and how hard we work to remember the forgotten and sometimes the invisible. And we want to honor them all in all of our work. So we are all here to keep taking it in and to share it in the work we do. Dream the garden. Here we are, and some doubt it. But we still know what is quick and wild, how hope or sorrow write themselves into a day, how we gently hold them in our hands like maps we know all too well. We are all that is found in the garden. We are the roots and the runners, the leveling and the digging. We are the sweet shoots and the good mud. See us in that blazing sun. We are not afraid. We are here to really feel it. You see, we are still the warriors to the collective colors that magnify. We are the blooms of memory of all that came before and the yet imagined words of the future. Thank you.
There is such immense talent in this room. I hope you all enjoyed the gift of Diane's words and are reminded of all that you are and will be. And now back to your regularly scheduled program. It's time to recognize our 2022 50 over 50 community honorees. Again, we ask the audience to hold your applause until we recognize all of the community honorees. There is no age limit to compassion and the drive to help those around you. The honorees in the community category prove as much. Their years of life have given them the big picture thinking to make their communities better, from working to end homelessness, promote healing from after trauma, or support those facing economic instability. At her office in the Phillips neighborhood of Minneapolis, Bharati Achura welcomes people who have been traumatized by abuse, neglect, poverty, and sex trafficking. Her work aims to bring these clients, mostly women of color, back to themselves, reconnecting them with their inner resources of strength and resilience, and supporting them as they interrupt cycles of historical and generational trauma. As a health mentor, Bharati also serves on the Minnesota Board of Behavioral Health and Therapy, and Minnesota's culturally informed, culturally specific task force. Dave Beal wants to redefine the role of citizen. With a well-earned reputation for advocating for older adults, this city server was asked to facilitate the work of a community-based group promoting social and economic justice in Rochester. Together, they formed In the City for Good, an ongoing collaborative effort to give every citizen a voice in the issues that affect them. Dave also played a central role in bringing Olmsted County into the AARP network of age-friendly states and communities. Bill Betzler from Brooklyn Center has invested his time in helping families find housing as a volunteer at the Dignity Center in Minneapolis. He works with R3, Teen Challenge, and Crossing Home, providing reentry support for people leaving prison. Finding hope in his own journey toward healing and wholeness, this healing helper walks alongside people trying to stay sober, people struggling to find and keep stable housing, and people pushing against barriers of sexism, racism, and ageism. To each person, he is an advocate and a mentor and a friend. 10 years ago, as a volunteer with various nonprofits in the metro area, Belinda Charleston Green of St. Paul became keenly aware You interrupted me. I thought there was something really hysterical. Okay. Belinda Charleston Green of St. Paul became keenly aware of the lack of resources available to Black women with HIV and AIDS. In 2013, this support shaper became a case manager with the Minnesota AIDS Project and Rainbow Health, and has since implemented peer-facilitated support group for women and people of color living with HIV, partnering with organizations in Greater Minnesota to expand the reach of this critical connection. Go Belinda. Metric Giles is the co-executive director of the Frogtown Community Stabilization Project. This policy pusher from St. Paul has used his position to convince the Ramsey County Board of Commissioners to improve the process for condemning houses, tipping it in favor of residents. As a member of the Age Friendly and Equity Alliance, Ramsey County, he has challenged the county commissioners to incorporate an aging lens to all their decisions and create a line item for services for the elderly. When A. Stewart Hansen of Minneapolis settled into the Park Shore Senior Campus, he introduced other residents to the book Being Mortal by Atul Gawande that covers issues of death and dying. From there, a small group formed, meeting regularly to talk about concerns like end-of-life planning and advanced directives. Under his leadership, the group has written and published a book, A Senior's Guide for Living Well and Dying, Conversations That Matter. Written with the conversation starter's compassionate voice, the book guides seniors and their loved ones through the conversations no one wants to have and everyone needs to have. Lowell Johnson is an experienced educator from Brainerd. In addition to leading a team of retired educators to teach literacy, art, and brain science classes in the Crow Wing County Jail, Lowell is the founder of the Adverse Childhood Experiences Resiliency Coalition. Through this work, Lowell is educating his community on brain science, mental health, and the effects of trauma on emotional and social wellness. Through seminars, webinars, articles, and a crisis line and referral service, he and his team are building understanding of the ripple effects of childhood trauma and neglect and supporting their neighbors with resources to help them recover and build resilience. After a long career in technical education in the automotive industry, Dr. Annette Parker switched gears to become a leader in STEM higher education. For the past 9 years, Dr. Parker has served as president of South Central College in North Mankato. As a Black university president with a STEM background, she is blazing a trail through southern Minnesota, busting through stereotypes of race and gender. Through volunteering and board service, this STEM inspirer uses her substantial leadership skills to support her community and inspire Black women and others to create their own way forward. For 30 years, Julie Ristow of Minneapolis has been disrupting and dismantling agricultural policies and practices that stress the earth, gobble up land, and limit access to food for marginalized communities. As an expert in land acquisition and repurposing, Julie has worked with environmental trusts and land restoration groups to gift land for public use and regenerative agriculture. Lending her expertise to Sharing Our Roots, a generative farm in Northland, this Roots Regenerator spearheaded a partnership with Dakota County that led to the acquisition of a permanent 100-acre farm that will support immigrant and emerging farmers and offer a model of regenerative cooperative farming. Joan and Segundo Velasquez from St. Paul, by the way of Bolivia, founded Mano a Mano International Partners in 1994. The nonprofit has developed partnerships with local community leaders to identify health and educational needs throughout Bolivia. And boy, have they met those needs. From shipping millions of pounds of supplies to constructing water wells, roads, community health clinics, and schools, and from airlifting rural patients to urban hospitals, to teaching farmers, community leaders, and students about sustainable land and water use, these two sustainable suppliers have made an immense impact in Bolivia. Most importantly, each of these projects is still in operation, owned, staffed, and maintained by the Bolivian people. Please join me in recognizing and celebrating this year's 50 over 50 community honorees.
Next up are the disruptors. Disruptors, please make your way to the stage and feel free to cause a disruption while doing so. Age doesn't come with unquestioned acceptance of power systems. The disruptor honorees illustrate that age comes with more questions that can, with hard work, lead to lasting change. Disruptors are often masters of the super why. Why is Africa shaped like a question mark? Why is self-care seen as a luxury? Do positive news stories exist anymore? How can we make access to the outdoor available to everyone? These honorees want to find out and make a difference in the process. Jenny Eldridge of Elk River is an adoptive mother. She noticed that along with the joys that adoption brings for adoptive families, there is also deep and often unsupported grief for birth mothers. That grief and trauma is particularly painful for mothers whose parental rights have been terminated by the courts. As executive director of Bellis, an adoption support organization, the Mother Supporter developed a first-of-its-kind network of peer support groups for birth mothers. Antonio Espinosa of Maplewood is a correctional officer at the state prison in Stillwater, where he spends his days in a system not known for cultivating hope of healing. But he is disrupting it anyway. After his friend and colleagues were murdered by one of the men in the prison, Antonio's drive to help incarcerated people experience transformation and restoration grew stronger. He started encouraging the men at the prison to paint, draw, and create art. Soon he turned the effort into a nonprofit. Obi Kipper Jr. is a labor advocate caterer from Bloomington. As a forensic consultant, Obi consults on labor and employment issues. You want him on your team. Okay. After a distinguished career in higher education, Dr. Joy Lewis stepped away to focus on her own wellness and healing in the community. Finding a lack of resources aimed at the specific trauma, stress, and challenges of Black people, she created her own. Dr. Lewis launched Joy Unlimited in 2013 and the Healing Justice Foundation in 2020, bringing healing and transformation grounding in Black liberation. By creating therapeutic spaces for people to practice meditation, mindfulness, emotional liberation, and conscious movement, this St. Paul wellness worker is creating what she calls in the Red Cross for the Black community. Dietitian Susan Morris of St. Paul knew of community gardening programs for young and knew many people were hungering for the wholesome, nourishing, delicious foods. She put the two together and came up with Roots for the Home Team, a unique salad enterprise guided by a youth advisory board. Roots Youth grew vegetables ingredients, then worked with professional chefs to develop recipes and sell the meals at major league ball games. The idea has expanded to include surviving salads to frontline workers, community groups, and people challenged with chronic illnesses. Julie Rappaport combined her passion for gardening and social justice to start Seeds Feeds, a nonprofit that addresses food security issues for children, families, and seniors in St. Louis Park. The organization has taught over 5,000 kids and educators, parents, and community members how to grow, prepare, preserve, and compose fresh, healthy food. As editor of the Strip's Inspired section, journalist Gil Rosenblum lifts up stories about goodness, hope, and change She showcases ordinary people working to challenge systems of injustice and leveraging the power of their communities to make the corner of the world a little brighter. In telling these stories, the positivity producer from Minneapolis has inspired over other media companies to create their own good news departments with heavy hitters like the Washington Post, Mother Jones, and the Philadelphia Inquirer, taking a page from her book and celebrating the stories that help us all remember that there is good out there. Brian Smith from Brooklyn Center is the Director of Performance and Innovation for the City of Minneapolis, where he's using his position of influence to remake a host of public safety practices to center and protect Black, Indigenous, and people of color residents. After deep community engagement and data analysis, Brian and his team learned that residents wanted a community-based response with ownership, staff representation, and expertise that reflected the communities being served. The result is a first-of-its-kind model where community-based providers are dispatched for behavioral health crises through 9/11. Anthony Taylor, an avid outdoorsman, has his hands in a host of initiatives around the Twin Cities aimed at breaking down the barriers that keep Black folks from accessing the lakes and trails of Minnesota. This people mover from St. Paul created a local chapter of the Major Taylor Bicycling Club for Black cyclists. He started Slow Roll Twin Cities to help people get started with cycling. And as adventure director of the Lappet Foundation, Anthony was a key member of the team that built the trailhead of Theodore Wirth Park, where he started Millennium in Motion and Cool Meets Cause, where BIPOC kids from low-income neighborhoods learn to snowboard. Last one. When Arnie Vino was a young boy, his father died by suicide. When no one came to help, Arnie vowed to be the person who pays attention to the needs of others. He went on to medical school and now serves as a family practice physician on the Fond du Lac Reservation. A member of the Mille-Lacs Band of Ojibwe, he hosts the Health Matters segment of Native Report on WSE Public Television. Is Dr. Science at the Ojibwe Language Camp and publishes essays about his experiences. Ani speaks on suicide prevention and supports the work of his wife, Ivy, who is also being honored today. Congratulations to this year's Disruptors.
Our final group of honorees to celebrate today are in the nonprofit category. Please make your way to the stage, nonprofit honorees. At the core of every nonprofit is a mission, the guiding force behind the organization's work, but at its heart are the leaders and the workers who bring that mission to life. The nonprofit honorees this year bring vision and an unwavering dedication to service. They are working to end genocide, find cures to chronic diseases, help families process grief, and more, all to make the world a more hospitable place. For decades, Atum Azahir's work has been defined by community-engaged research and cultural wellness. At age 50, she started the Cultural Wellness Center in Minneapolis with the goal of reconnecting Black communities with the health and wellness practices that are their birthright. Nearly 3 decades later, her reputation has made her the go-to resource for Black communities processing the ongoing trauma of police violence and economic injustice, leaning on the cultural practices, rituals, and ceremonies of Black ancestors to bring healing, strength, and connection. Freddie Bell is the voice of and for the people. As the general manager of the KMOJ Center for Communication and Development and chairman of the Association of Minnesota Public Educational Radio Stations, Freddie is known as a champion for young broadcasting talent and a radio host who brings historical context to the music he plays. In 2020, this airwave activator launched a journalism initiative called Racial Reckoning, the Arc of Justice, with Ampers, KMOJ, and the Minnesota Humanities Center to cover the trials of the former police officers who murdered George Floyd and the Black community's efforts to create a more just society. For more than 40 years, Lori Daly has served communities in rural Minnesota as a social worker. Rural areas are facing the worst shortage of health and human service professionals in history due to burnout. Midway through her career, she realized that part of her mission was not just to serve her clients, but to make sure there would be someone there to serve their children. She made the move to academia and is now a professor emeritus for Concordia College, where she works to produce continuing education for human service professionals. Ellen Kennedy of Edina started World Without Genocide in 2006. Now a powerhouse human rights leader, Ellen and her organization have stepped into the highest chambers of state, federal, and world governments to advocate for human rights. The organization compelled the Minnesota legislature to divest the state's pension funds from companies complicit in the genocides at Darfur and Sudan. 8 Minnesota cities and the Minnesota Bar Association have done the same. Ellen's sights are now set on restoring voting rights to formerly incarcerated people and fighting for the rights of transgender students. In 1997, Sana like Donna, so Sana. Okay, I'm going to get her last name right. Mering. Thank you. Friend gave birth to a premature baby. As a software engineer, she put together a simple website for her friend to keep family up to date on baby Briggs' health and have access to the love and care of their community. Now known as Caring Bridge. Everybody knows that, right? That's amazing. Wow. That's profound. I have like 5 friends on Caring Bridge right now. The site serves as an irreplaceable support system for millions of people experiencing a health crisis. For this care connector from Egan, the mission of Caring Bridge is the same as it was when it was focused on one family, to help people be with the ones they love, even when they're far away. Catherine Sublette got into trouble as a young woman, paid her debt, and did her time. But 30 years after leaving prison, her felony record still made it illegal for her to be denied housing and jobs. So she set out to change that. As founder and executive director of Let's Erase the Stigma, this injustice eraser from Winona leverages the same powers of persuasion she used to get her own record expunged to help others walk through the long and tedious process of reclaiming their rights after incarceration. Along the way, she mentors her clients on improving their credit and restoring their self-confidence and sense of self-worth. Yep, that's it. Let's show some love for this year's nonprofit honorees.
Let's give one final round of applause for all of the over 50 honorees, and thank them again for their contributions to our great state. In Wisdom Teachings, Lessons Learned from Gathering of Elders, an elder is defined as a person who deserves respect and honor, and whose work is to synthesize wisdom from the life experience and formulate this into a legacy for future generations. I would now like to invite AARP Minnesota State Director Kathy McClear to the stage for a few closing remarks before we wrap up the celebration. Welcome, Kathy.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Wow, and thank you so much, Woki and Anthony. And again, a huge round of applause for all of our honorees, our fabulous MCs, and Diane Jarvie. So for those of you who might not know, AARP is the nation's largest nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to empowering people 50 and older to choose how they live as they age. With a nationwide presence and nearly 38 million members, including 630,000 members right here in Minnesota, AARP works to strengthen communities, advocates for what matters most to families, including health security, financial stability, and personal fulfillment. It is not every day that a group of people from such diverse set of backgrounds and circumstances can come together in one place, and today is one of those days, and it's one of the many reasons why this initiative and this celebration is truly so very special. And just a side note, for those of you who are past honorees and thinking, boy, that sure doesn't look like the state director, Will Phillips, wasn't that the guy? I've been in this role for a year. I've been with AARP for 18 years and had the opportunity to watch from the sidelines as this very special program came together. And now to be here in front of all of you and share this experience firsthand is really, really tremendous. So increasingly, we are not looking to big national institutions or leaders to solve the problems for us because they are disconnected and ill-equipped to do so. The real work is happening at the most local level by people like you who are rooted in community, and you all know how to get things done. While your passions and your age allow us to tell a different story about what it means to age in Minnesota, your individual and collective work is making our state a better place to live and thrive for people of all ages. And that's why we're here today. That's who you are. Thank you for what you do and for allowing us to tell your story. And for me, having just turned 50 this year, you are all truly an inspiration, demonstrating that at this milestone in life, the best is truly yet to come and opportunities to make a difference abound. We'd also like to take a minute to recognize the work of our selection committee. Now, this is one very dedicated group of folks. They spend a significant time reading and considering all of those many, many applications, and they take so much pride in making their final choices. And it is a very hard choice that they have to make. So let's recognize the selection committee members. When I call your name, just stand if you're able. So Dr. Rose Chu, Antonio Espinoza, Kevin Lindsay, Al McFarland, Meredith Lee Moore, Beth Parkhill, Diana Pierce, Rebecca Stibbe, Jason Swanson, and Umu Odo. Thank you again for that very difficult job of selecting this year's honorees. And just a warning to all of you honorees in the room today, we may be reaching out to you to begin this building the selection committee for 2024. And so consider yourselves warned. All right, and I know we're running a little bit long, and we're so glad that you all hung in there with us. I would like to bring Julie Cohen with Pollen Midwest back to the stage. She is the Engagement and Advancement Director for Pollen, our 50 over 50 partner organization. And we are so grateful for you, Julie, and for Pollen and all you've done to make this a truly successful event. So, Julie?
All right, y'all, I'm gonna be quick. I'm the only person standing between you and food. I'll be fast. We are really proud, Pollen, to be the partner organization. For those of you who are not familiar with Pollen, we are a media arts organization that harnesses the power of narrative change to advance towards a society that is more just, loving, and free. And all of you in this room are helping us to do that. Your stories as honorees, your support as nominators, your presence here in this room, you are helping us change the narrative about what it means to age in Minnesota. We're very grateful that you're here. It's been an immense honor to be a part of this program for the last 6 years. I've visited with many of you honorees. You've been to our office. I hung out with some of you in airport security lines. It's been really a great honor to get to know all of you. And I'm not quite 50 yet. I'm getting there. Got 5 more years to go, and I'm really excited that maybe I can make the list. I feel like I have a good shot. There were 3 Julies on this year's list. So my chances are high. I'm very excited. We want to invite all of our honorees, past and present. Please join our alumni group on Facebook, where you can connect with your fellow honorees and keep us posted on what's going on. I want to thank Carla Barnhill for writing all the honorees' bios, Stella Williams for the incredible illustrations that you see in the program and on the slides. And to Juxtaposition Arts, we had 3 ceramics apprentice artists create the awards that were given out to our honorees this year, which was a great intergenerational collaboration. I also want to thank my Pollen team, Michaela, our project manager, Jerome Rankin, our editorial director, Brenda Tran, our creative director who created everything that you see in this room, Jamie, Liz, everybody, Anne-Marie, oh my God, I'm probably Tom, Carla back there running the show. Thank you, Carla. We're gonna be sending out a survey tomorrow, maybe. We would love it if you would fill it out. Your feedback means a lot to us. We really take it in. We want to improve our events. So thank you. Thank you to the AARP team for making all of this happen. And stay tuned. Next year, we're going to be doing some more stories on honorees, hosting some events, and be thinking about who you want to nominate for 2024 when we open nominations again. And then I think the last thing I need to say is if you are a 2022 honoree, please stick around back here. We're going to do a group photo of all like 42 of you who showed up today, which is amazing. So please stick around for a group photo. Enjoy the rest of your evening. We have some snacks and libations for you to enjoy. Thank you all for coming so much.